A beautiful morning to you, shall we say. Thank God it's Friday. It's 28 degrees here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Malpo Yusuf.
Good morning and welcome to the end of the week. Time for you to rest. Have a great weekend. I'm Kayla Megwa. Welcome to the program.
Indeed. Well, that's not where we're starting from, not Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. We're taking you all the way to Ondo State, and we're taking you 3,000 feet above sea level, where you're going to be seeing the Idanre Hills. Yes, in all their majesty and glory. I mean, just take a look at that. A sight for sore eyes. That's just one of the hills that make up the undulating hills and mountains you'll see in Idanre. I mean, their historical significance is undoubted, and it's no wonder that they have been nominated to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Kayla, I know you like to hike. Do you think you want to take a challenge?
Oh yeah,
here?
that looks like it. it looks like one of those places that I would love to go to. I'm trying to look around it to see what kind of communities are there. This looks daunting, but looks like it will be quite an adventure. You know, it usually helps if there's a community around.
Indeed.
If there's a community around, then you have people around you. You feel a little safer, unless unlike when the place is totally isolated. But I can see a community there. So it looks like a wonderful hiking trail. I've never been to this place before. It looks like one that I should put on my list.
Indeed, you should.
I should take you along with me. We should do this together.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about Idanre is that it's been there ages. I mean, it's been there since forever. There's actually a community on top of Idanre Hills. And if you speak to John Mekwa, she used to do a program called Travel Guide. Okay. She's been here. She's taken, you know, viewers of her program along with her on this trail. There are actually stairs carved into these hills for you to go and see the community that used to reside. Apparently, there's still, you know, leftovers of that community that used to reside on the hills. They've been there for ages. And I think they're also reputed to live really, really, really long. So you don't just have a community, you have an actual local government. Take a look at that. It's a whole bustling community around Idanre Hills. So yes, I mean, why not? It certainly will be something.
I mean, the Ondo State government...
It will be a good group sport, let me put it that way.
Exactly. I mean, the Ondo State government would do very well to add a little bit more activities, you know, put something in this area, you know, that draws people. And you are absolutely correct. It was added to the UNESCO World Heritage, the tentative list on the 8th of October in 2007 in the cultural category. So it's one that the Ondo State government should actually be looking at now that we're looking at states creating more internally generated revenue. This is one of those seeds that could blossom into an absolute harvest for the state. And I like the myths around places like this. They say there are 9 ancient wonders and beliefs, you know, and I think there's a lot of it. I think you should read up on around 9 of them. I'm going to go through this rabbit hole later to see what these ancient wonders are, because you can't have a site like this put into that UNESCO category, that World Heritage category in the cultural area, without there being some kind of cultural significance to this place. So, you know, it's one that I think they should preserve a little bit more, make it more out there, and put a lot of activities that will draw people from all over the world to come and see this. But that is breathtaking.
Indeed,
so
it is. Especially
I can imagine how clean this air is.
Indeed.
It'll be fantastic.
And now that we're talking about poor air quality here in Abuja, it's not only poor air quality we're talking about in the Federal Capital Territory. We're also talking about infrastructure destruction and theft. And it's something that, you know, residents of the Federal Capital Territory never thought they would, you know, have to deal with. But sadly, this has now become a trend of sorts, where all of the efforts around building infrastructure, and if there's anything that people really marvel at when they come to Abuja, it is the amount of infrastructure, the roads, the wide roads, the barricades you have in place, the flyovers, etc., etc. I mean, when you come to Abuja, you suddenly will say, oh, this is a wonderful city. But then you now have some people who specialize, whose specialization is in destroying or endangering the lives of others. Take a look at this manhole covers that have been taken away from drainages, you know, around the Federal Capital Territory. There have been times when you're driving on the express and people drive really fast here in Abuja, Kayla, and then all of a sudden you see a big hole. That hole used to be covered. All of a sudden, you know, the covering around that hole is gone. And then you're wondering, who is thinking like this? Who doesn't know that when you take this sort of manhole cover away, or when you remove a piece of infrastructure like this, you are endangering the lives of people along this road? But apparently, there are people who think like that, who think about money first before they think about the lives of their fellow citizens. So right now, the police in Abuja is not relenting. They're cracking down, and I think they're going to the root source. They're going to the people who make it attractive for people to commit this sort of crimes. Because if there was no demand, if there was a differentiation to say, no, we will not buy this type of thing because we think you've stolen it, then maybe people will be deterred from wanting to even steal it in the first instance.
Mark, but one of the things I've always loved about you is your absolute faith in humanity. When you meet these criminals, these people who steal drainage covers, the street lights, I have seen somebody in Gwarimpa using a saw to saw down those lights.
Yeah, the poles.
The poles, sawing it down at night. The pole wasn't off. The light was on. He was sawing it down. You know, so I think a lot of things have happened in the past few weeks, though. So this crackdown is on the metal scrap markets in the FCT. This is the day-day market, I think, and it's a joint task force, the NSCDC, the police, and the FCT authorities, all right, making sure that they go to where these things are. So, but there's a different dimension to it, which the FCT minister has addressed. And I'm very excited about that, because following this particular problem for years now, one of the biggest issues, Mark, was the fact that the punishment, when they catch manhole cover thieves or vandals and infrastructure thieves, the punishment used to be 2,500 naira, sometimes 500 naira, sometimes 5,000 naira, or they'll tell them to go and sweep Wuse Market.
Oh.
So this was the problem. You would see repeat offenders when they parade the suspects, and I think we'll be showing that visual of the parade. When they parade the suspects who were found with these manhole covers and infrastructure generally, wires, rail tracks, whatever, you notice that some of them are repeat offenders. There are people that they've arrested before and they've done it again. And we had to find out from the police and the NSCDC what the problem was. They told us that was the problem, the punishment. The deterrent wasn't there. Well, the FCT minister in the past few days had a meeting, and they have decided to up that deterrent. You'll be tried for things like manslaughter, attempted murder. So if those kinds of deterrents are there, the punishment is becoming not a little, it's a lot stricter. Yeah. With that strict punishment now, we might see a reduction in this sort of behavior. But it just wasn't working, Mark. But 2,500 naira, tell someone to go and sweep Wuse Market, he will rob again.
I would have, I would have been very, very, that's very curious, because, I mean, when you think about the level of danger that they put the citizens into, I mean, maybe initially it used to be, I think they're now beginning to think about manslaughter, attempted murder, economic sabotage.
Economic sabotage, yes.
Yeah, so those are the three major things they're thinking of. And I would have thought that was what they would have used in the first instance. Oh, no. Because when you think about the fact that a number of citizens have lost not just their vehicles, but maybe nearly lost their lives as a result of this, that should have been the minimum, for this sort of behavior. Endangering the lives of other people, especially when you talk about lights being stolen, for God's sake. If you cannot see clearly at night, or you are robbed or mugged in a place that is dark, these are the kinds of dangers. So it's a good thing that this is happening, but what I'm even more happy about is the fact that they're not just looking at the people who are stealing these things, but they're also going to the people who are receiving the stolen goods. And
pan-taker markets, that's what we call them in local parlance. Yeah, the scrap metal markets, the one in Kabusa, this one in Dede, all of them around the FCT have been shut down for now, according to the FCT minister. That's good. None of them are working. So if you're there and you are working there, you're doing business, you have some things you want to sell there, that's just not going to work. It is not working right now, and everyone is focused on stopping this particular menace, Margaret.
Well, I sincerely hope that the crackdown continues until we get an actual stop to activities like this. At this point, we'll take a break and we're back to sink our teeth into the real issues for today. Please stay with us.
The forum reiterated its strong support for the comprehensive reform of Nigeria's decade tax laws. Governors acknowledged the importance of modernizing the tax system to enhance fiscal stability and align with global best practices.
Two, the forum endorsed a vast value-added tax slab shall be formed up to ensure equitable distribution of resources as follows: 50% based on equality, 30% based on collaboration, and 20% based on cooperation.
Well, there you have it. That story broke yesterday. The governors of Plateau and Adamawa State reading out the resolutions of the Nigerian Governors Forum that has now thrown their weight behind the tax reform bills, agreeing that it was a cake all along, but they have now been able to resolve some of the controversy that they had, especially around the value-added tax. And that's what we're going to be sinking our teeth into this morning. We're going to be having this conversation with two guests, one of them in our studios here. Dr. Taufik Raimi is a development expert and also a business and policy analyst. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining us virtually is Mr. Shuaibu Idris, who's an economist and the managing director, CEO of Timeline Consult Limited. He joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Dr. Idris.
Good morning, my boy, and Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you very quickly, did this resolution, this agreement come as a surprise to you? Are you surprised that they have reached this very quickly?
No, I'm not surprised. It's part of the developments that usually political, gladiators almost always come about. There is, chances that you disagree, and then you jow, and then eventually you settle into, somewhat a form of an agreement. So I'm not surprised that the governors, the Nigerian Governors Forum, come about that. But I think, if any, I would have said this is what they should have done, as opposed to what they did earlier on under the National Economic Council, under the chairmanship of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because I thought it was wrong for them to come out confronting Mr. President to say, withdraw the tax bills. This is what they should have done, but then better late than never.
Well, I don't know what your initial impressions were. I mean, this came totally from out of the blues. Well, we know that they had been meeting, they had been consulting, but what the impression we had gotten was that, the governors were digging in their heels, especially when you listen to someone like Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State. You would have thought that this was going to be a real difficult issue because it had obviously become very political. So what are your reactions seeing just how, this has now been resolved?
Well, it gladdened my heart. And I think most Nigerians are also relieved that we have prevented an affordable crisis in our hand, coupled with what Nigerians have been going through, which are obvious. But I'm not surprised that this resolution has come, because sometimes last year, December, I was on one of your programs here, and I did say that when Mr. President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, during the presidential media chat, said that the tax reform bill has come to stay. He wasn't proud like many people had thought. He was simply saying the obvious. And I believe, and I also heard it on one of those, your program and elsewhere, that he's a strategist. He's going to, and he also said during that media chat that he's not foreclosing dialogue, collaboration, negotiation, even with the governors, on the gray areas. So that it came like what we call something in the night, could be a surprise.
Like a thief in the night.
But I can tell you definitely that I was anticipating it. I know that we have a visionary leader who believes in having the best for the country. At least this tax reform bill, we know the advantages are gamut. As at the time, most of these governors were agitating against it. Most of them have not even studied the bills. So, and I know that once those negotiations behind the scene, even before this two-day retreat, there have been a lot of lobby, there have been a lot of explanation, there have been a lot of communication. So that's why it is I believe that even for any other problem we are confronting in this country, they are not insurmountable. What did we require? We require good vision. We require good collaboration. We require inclusiveness. They also want to be carried along. They don't want to be neglected. Of course, the medium they had used was very antagonistic. So I want to believe that it's a delayed Christmas gift to Nigeria, but it's not denied.
Well, take a look at what had happened. I mean, when you hear the formula that they have reached to the value-added tax, which was where the bone of contention was, and how a number of states, particularly northern states, felt that they were going to be at a disadvantage. They have now been able to resolve that 50% will be, shared on the basis of equality, 30% on the basis of derivation, and 20% on the basis of population, which is not very different from what we had before.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is sufficient incentive? Because part of what people were looking at is a situation whereby states that had been lagging behind somewhat, would also up the ante with the level of activities, economic activities in their own state.
For me, I would have asked the state governors to be more up and doing, to be more creative in order to increase their IGR, and not to rest completely or most substantially like it has happened over the years on the federal allocation revenue, as it were. I would have loved that they stay with what the bill has proposed. But you see, even if they had stayed with it, this bill is still subject to some amendment consideration at the National Assembly. I believe that it's an ongoing conversation. And I also believe that, maybe this is their own card for compromise. In politics or even in organization management, there is a question of give and take. But this is not enough to really ginger them to be able to put on more effort at their state level. I've said that this country, the Nigerians, all that we are expecting in terms of improvement on standard of life, infrastructure, and all that cannot happen if we simply continue to focus on what the federal government is doing. That's why in the last 1 month, and also on your previous program, I said that the total budget of all the states, 36 states of the federation, is just about 26 trillion naira. The federal government budget is 49 trillion naira. Only 3 states in this country has above 1 trillion naira. Lagos, Ogun, and Enugu, possibly. And that's very surprising. Enugu is doing fantastically well.
No, not even Rivers.
Rivers about 1.0 trillion as well. Lagos, 3 trillion. And when you look at all these 3 states I mentioned, their IGR is very substantial. But all other states, we even have states that are less than about 300 billion naira, total budget, not even performance. And we know that most of the budgets in Nigeria are not performed to. So the point I'm trying to say here is that the government at subnational still need to do more. They need to adopt philosophies or model like public-private partnership in order to augment the revenue that is coming from the federal and also their own IGR. So I believe that what the tax reform bill has proposed should have been more sufficient.
I want to be able to talk with Mr. Idris on what these figures actually mean. Mr. Idris, so I want to understand this. Equality, derivation, population, and then the percentages that this VAT, the VAT sharing formula, will be allocating. And like we've been showing on the screen, 50% of revenue based on equality, 30% on derivation, and 20% on population. What does that mean on the ground? Let's say I'm from Ekiti State and I'm hearing this. What does that mean? And what does that tell us about what the governors will be getting in this regard?
Yeah, I think basically what that means is let's give a hypothetical figure. Say there is 1 trillion naira that will be shared among the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT. 50% of that, meaning 500 billion naira, will be shared among 36 states of the Federation pro rata, that is on equality basis. So you just divide 500 billion over 36, and then each person will get the same amount. Then you now go back to, the balance of the 500 billion, which is the balance of the 50%. You now take 30% of that and distribute it to according to the ratio of the collection of the VAT, which means states like Lagos, Rivers, Ogun, Kano, and maybe Kaduna and a few others that usually have been able to generate a lot of businesses within their precinct, then they will get, lion's share of that 30% of the collection. And then the 20% that is going to be shared based on other factors will then also be shared to each of the states. So generally, there is not so much significant difference from what we have had in the last, say 15, 20 years. But the major change from the current formula is the percentage of the derivation from what it currently is, I think about 20% to 30%. I think this is a marked improvement, and we should be able to, to say, states like Lagos and Rivers, I hope they will be appeased so that on the basis of this understanding, the pending Supreme Court case that this state have taken as regards the issue of sales tax or value-added tax, then they will eventually withdraw that court case. Because if the court that case is allowed to see the light of the day, chances are we will have significant challenges. Because everyone knows that the sales tax is supposed to be collected by states, but we have an OPEC system in Nigeria, in the sense that because of the strategic advantages of these two states, they have the seaports and they have access to the fact that preponderance of industries are located in Lagos, Ogun axis, as well as some part of the south-south rivers, and a bit of Kano, some part of Kano and Kaduna. These advantages would have given them a larger chunk of the sales tax, because if they were allowed to just be the one to charge these taxes, then no other state will get anything. What is surprising is, if you look at the statistic, 30, 50, 30, 20, there is no mention of the federal area revenue that is collecting the money. There are other, deductions that it used to be, and no mention of those deductions were made in this understanding. One will wonder, this sharing, is it after those deductions? And then no mention of the share of the federal government, because currently what we have is a portion of the VAT is also enjoyed by the federal government. And I think, what came out from the Governors Forum, we probably haven't had the last of it. And I do hope that when the details are out, it wouldn't be a bit of contentious, so-called agreement. But what is clear is what Taufik has said, is Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a deal maker, he's a politician, he's been around for years. So I'm happy he's able to engage the governors and to be able to come out with this, agreement.
I want to be able to also get your thoughts on the rejection of the value-added tax, increase in value-added tax. So that because we've looked at some of the things that they have agreed on, but there were some basic things in those tax reform bills that they rejected, one of them being the increase in VAT. Let's talk a little bit about that, Mr. Shaibu Idris. What does that mean for the Nigerian people? They sold it to us yesterday as though this is great news for us. No one wants to hear of an increase in anything at this particular point in time. What were your thoughts on the rejection of any increase in value-added tax?
Well, as an economist and a keen observer of our environment and our events, and then a comparison between Nigeria and a number of other countries, particularly countries of Africa, that our tax to GDP ratio is rather very, very low. Yes, I do agree that maybe the timing for an increase is not right when we're just coming out of, say, massive devaluation, removal of subsidies in the petroleum products, as well as energy cost and other what have made us to be experiencing cost of living crisis. But I think it is probably wrong to categorically say the governors disagree with increase. I would have thought that the agreement should be a little specific. Yes, there may be need to increase these taxes, but the timing is wrong. Maybe end of this year, maybe first quarter of next year. Just like what the bill proposed, there was a kind of stratification and a bit of staggering of the increase. I thought, the agreement should have been a little categorical as categorical as to, yes, we agree to the increase, and not a categorical statement that, no, we disagree on the increase. I'm a Nigerian, I live here, and I feel the pains. But I still feel that there should have been a bit of a give and take on that particular, aspect of the proposed tax bill. What I mean is, like I did say, a bit of staggering and a delay in the implementation of the increase, but not a capital no as is being proposed or is being dished out by the governors.
I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Raimi. I mean, there was the other big elephant in the conversation yesterday, and it was the rejected terminal clauses for development levies in the tax reform bills. And then they emphasized the need for sustained funding for agencies like TET Fund, NASENI, and NITDA to support national development.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Kela. What I want to say about this is that, you see, when we say we are doing reform, and we say we want to stay on status quo, there's nothing will be new, So all these critical areas, whereas negotiation can be carried out, we should not, the governors and other stakeholders, should look at the merits about them. Are you getting me? Not to say no to this, because that means that we are going to return factually almost an old bill back to what it was before. The development levy, yes, we should stop. Nigeria should modernize its tax system. Nigeria should modernize the way we do things. The world has moved beyond where we are today, where I would describe as a feeding bottle economy, where every time you just think that for the next 10, 20 years, the way things have been done should just remain status quo. I quite agree with Aziz when he talks about certain things can be staggered. And that staggering of implementation of some of these have even been proposed in the bill. The development bill that levy that we are talking about, which solely up to today is being enjoyed only by TET Fund as an education tax going to develop our university, polytechnic, colleges of education. The proposed bill did not say they are phasing it out completely at this moment. It only says that between now and 2026, they will get 50% of that development levy. Whereas other agencies that are also in need of funding will have the remaining 50%. And by 2027, the TET Fund will get 66.7%, thereabout. Only by 2030, when it's expected that TET Fund should be able to create revenue, just like what the JAMB is doing You know, we said that even the current debate that's going on in the National Assembly is asking that federal governments should stop giving revenue to JAMB because they are making money. If you make money, you can spend it. In fact, we should get to a point that you make enough. That's why I have proposed that most of the ministries should not just be an expenditure center, just coming to spend money. This attitude of leaders thinking that ministers, directors, thinking that, oh, their own goal is how to collect from federal government and spend. No, we must be innovative. We must be creative. If we must spend money, we must create money. So I believe that all those areas that they have rejected, you know, their position yesterday is still not law. We must tell our viewers across the globe that while we appreciate their endorsement, but the most important news about it is that they have suspended, they've seen the vision, they are ready to support the president's tax reform bill, but they have reservation. So it is not still law yet. They are still going to be, it's already, they've also even okay that the processes should continue at National Assembly, you know. So there will still be negotiation, there will still be understanding. So I believe that in the end, we will strike a balance. But my point here is that we should not think that we are reforming when most of the critical points that we have said we want to change are being asked to be left as status quo. This reform bill, we have 4 bills, as you know. It will help manufacturers. You know, the CIT, we must mention, corporate income tax, is now being asked to be reduced from 30% to 25%. Even though that 25% is below, is still higher than the global competitiveness, you know, which is 23%. So I want to believe that there are a lot of, and if this bill is passed very shortly, you know as well that there is also going to be room for amendment in future when we see that there are more realities about it.
Exactly. We'll get to that conversation in a bit because it also has to be a sort of document that can evolve, isn't it? Because that was the problem with our former tax laws, was that they couldn't evolve. But I want to be able to get Mr. Idris's thoughts on that. Are we sticking with the past? Or are we moving forward? Because well, the seminal clauses for development levies and the tax reform bills, sustained funding, the need for sustained funding for agencies like TETFund and NASENI and NIDA to support national development. I want to know what your thoughts are on that, Mr. Idris. Are we sticking to the past? Are we moving forward?
No, I think, you know, I like to draw the attention of Mr. Taufik Rahimi that there's a popular phrase that goes, you know, when it ain't broken, why mend it? You know, so the fact that the laws, the taxation laws have been archaic for over, you know, 30 years, 40 years, we haven't rejuvenated the tax laws. That doesn't mean that it has to be rejuvenated, kind of. So we can always leave it when it's unbroken, no need to mend it. However, I think this is where, you know, the governors have made, you know, a mistake. You know, on one side, you are saying don't increase VAT. On another side, you are saying go ahead with development levy. And what the tax bill proposed was removal of this or discontinuation of charging of these levies, and then an increase in, you know, in the VAT. So if you observe, like a typical accountant will tell you, the debit and the credit, the left and the right-hand side of the equation are being touched, meaning on one side you are removing development levies and then lessen the tax burden, and on the other side you are enhancing, you know, the tax rate. So what you are losing from, you know, discontinuation of the collection of levies, you are gaining from a slight or marginal increase in the tax rate. I think we need to come out of the shackle, like he did say, Taufik said, a feeding bottle economy. We are just feeding people. Guys, you know, institutions, organizations, governments must rise up to do fundamentally 2 things. Number one, we need to reduce, you know, the excessiveness of our spending so that the cost of governance can reduce. We need to manage the tax system. Like he did say, the company's income tax is way out of the ordinary. global best practices is somewhere around 15-20%. The highest is 23%. Ours is 30%. This is a disincentive to investors to come and invest in Nigeria and provide employment opportunities. And last but not the least is to be a little frugal in the management of our resources. I don't see a rationale where you could say a TED fund or a NASEMI should be able to generate income. Maybe NASEMI, because of their activities, the research and the development of research findings that they are supposed to do. Maybe they can be marketing them and selling and then earning revenue. But Tertiary Education Trust Fund is very unlikely going to be able to be generating any money. And what the tax bill proposal failed to address is, while you are proposing that the source of the funding for these agencies will be discontinued from this revenue generating taxes, the bill proposal did not make adequate provision as to how do we intend to fund these agencies. Unless otherwise, Mr. President is going to propose a massive, rejuvenation of our educational system. Otherwise, it's practically impossible for the universities to sustain themselves when you have denied them the right to be independent, you have denied them the right to generate income, to be able to be sustainable within their own system. And you also, Mr. President, should have insisted going forward, the states are supposed to be funding primary education and secondary education. How much is the allocation to the educational sector at that level, the primary and secondary school education? Why should, for example, the Universal Basic Education Commission be funding, say, secondary school education, when the state should massively enhance their IGR, the Internet Generated Revenues, to be able to fund the education? So we needed a bit of a major discourse before the bills came out, which was lacking. And glory be to God, the delay we have had has given us, of course, the conversation that we needed to have before the bills came out. But unfortunately, the conversation came in more on a polarized manner, North versus South, regional or political parties. This PDP is against this, APC governors are, some of them are in support. But if you read the body language, 1 week ago, 10 days ago, some of the governors that were so vocal and vociferous against the bill started saying, oh, we are seeing, the goodness in some of this bill. Abdullah Sule, for example, of Nasarawa State, Zulum of Borno State were quite vocal and vociferous in terms of their opposition on the proposed bills. But in the last 10 days, 14 days, they appear to gradually and slightly shift position, at least from what I have heard from the...
what I want to know, and I'll come to you again, I think I should just come to Mr. Raimi here. I don't know whether you're still comfortable, because where this conversation actually started from was the Northern Governors Forum. There are 19 Northern Governors before it went to the National Economic Council. So on Tuesday, they held their meeting, that's the Northern Governors Forum, and on Thursday, when the National Economic Council meeting they held that, oh, withdraw this thing so we can have a conversation. And then the president swiftly responded and said, no, it's already in the National Assembly, go and have your conversation there. Whatever conversation there needs to be will be done there. Are you comfortable now, because this is taken for granted that all the governors, because we're hearing it under the aegis of the Nigerian Governors Forum, are you convinced, looking at the number of governors we're seeing at this retreat, that the Nigerian the Northern Governors Forum, will be totally behind this? Would you take the representation you're seeing there as the voice also of the Northern Governors Forum?
Oh, well, you have asked a very important question, honestly. But I have great confidence in this. There are three things in the past that I predicted on your program in other places. When the issue of refinery was being doubted, I said, no, it's going to work. Now we are saying that it's working. That's private refinery and also Nigeria refinery. Two, I also said that food inflation will come down. With this bill being passed, 0% on agricultural products and other, it will pass. Three, the issue of Northern Governors Forum, they are part of who spoke yesterday. Just like my colleague at the off station had mentioned, we know those that were very vocal about it.
Exactly. Are you
not that I want to believe they are.
Are you
now
concerned that they're not here?
No.
They're not represented
no,
here.
they are represented. Like yesterday, I saw the governor of Nasarawa. He made a speech. He was very vocal. He was even on channel all through the problem, the time of this, I won't call it crisis, I would just say misinformation and misunderstanding, you know. But he was one of those who spoke yesterday to say, this is a way to go, it is good. But they have reservation with the who want their National Assembly people to look at. The Bauchi, the only person that we have not heard from is the Bauchi State Governor, His Excellency Bala Mohammed, who again, incidentally, did not attend the pally that was held in Lagos during the Christmas. That's their homage to the president. And when people wanted to politicize it, I think his press people came on board and said, no, he couldn't attend. He was the only governor that was not there. He couldn't attend because he lost his stepmother. That was what was said. Except for him, I do not believe that there are many others that were very critical. The 19 northern governors, I believe they already have agreed to whatever their colleagues have jointly agreed. I believe at this point, they are going to be wearing their nationalistic cap rather than regional cap. Don't forget.
The question will be at what cost? Because Nadal, those who are saying that what we're going to be saying will be a watered-down version of these bills.
You know, I already mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's why I said that it's not to say don't do this. Yes, I agree with my colleague that why do you change a system that works for you? But why must you not change a system that is not working for you? The current tax system is not only long overdue to be for review. We have seen complexity, a tax system that levy businesses about 90 different taxes, at a time to 60. Now, this particular tax bill is going to reduce all those taxes, harmonize it to not more than 20 tax heading, to even single digit. The presidential, this bill is proposing that at most we will have about 10 tax heading, so that businesses can predict how much they are to budget every year. Why are businesses being killed in Nigeria? Why are companies leaving? One of it is our tax system. You know, so there is no, do not forget that I believe these are people, are governors, they are going to be leaders that also have realized that it is for the good of everybody. Nigerians deserve to have a better life. When we have this tax pass, it will increase our revenue, and so more money. But my concern that I want to advise Mr. President is that Nigeria is not bereft of laws. What has always happened is in the implementation. This harmonization that we have had, I hope when this tax bill is passed, we will start hearing some local government across our roads, across the country, still putting a barricade and say, no, they are not aware. That is why I'm asking for more orientation. And you press, you have done very well. Even your channels had a town hall meeting anchored by Sheung Okebaloye at the time during the Imbro Glow, where he brought Taiwo Oyedele, who is the presidential chairman for the tax reform. Other stations also have done so. This is exactly what we should do. There should be more orientation. There should be more. People want to know, how does this benefit us? Individuals that are earning less than 1 million, any employee that is any less than 1 million in Nigeria will not pay tax under this arrangement. Those are the kind of things that I think we should continue to say. So the Northern Governors Forum, alongside all other stakeholders that are aggrieved before because they weren't carried along, I think they have seen light and they want to support Mr. President. We professionals too, we must support Mr. President.
I mean, on a professional level, what's the next move? What happens next? Because this is just the Nigerian Governors Forum. It doesn't mean that it's made into law.
You're right. Though on professional level, we will continue, like the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, their DG was on another program yesterday, whereby he was even asked that they are dissatisfied with certain clauses. He refuted it that, no, they are not dissatisfied. It's only that they have observation. They wanted the CIT that I mentioned earlier, corporate income tax, to be reduced further because Ghana is at 25% as we speak. That's why most companies are leaving to Ghana. Egypt is 27%. Nigeria currently is at 30%. And you know money, foreign investment goes to where there is best opportunity, security, political will, infrastructure.
Yeah, my question really was about processes. Now that the Nigerian Governors Forum have come up with some kind of arrangement, so what's the next process?
The next process is that the bill is already at the National Assembly. It wasn't withdrawn. It has no reason to be withdrawn because it's an executive bill. Now, the National Assembly, the Senate will continue to, they will now set a date for public hearing. That's what I believe, alongside the House of Rep. You know, House of Rep has not also gone their own second reading. I believe the next thing is for them to do second reading. Public views, even all other stakeholders that have not also been satisfied, they have opportunity. That was even what I suggested the last time.
So this document, this agreement by the Nigerian Governors Forum,
yes.
So this document goes to the National Assembly? Is that what you're saying?
It's already the National Assembly.
No, it's already these adjustments. These adjustments.
Those are the part of that's their own that's their own submission to the public hearing.
Okay.
That will now they will condense it together and take it maybe through their own representation to the National Assembly and say, this is what area we believe you should look at.
So that's the next phase, the public hearing.
That's the next phase, public hearing. Okay. Once the public hearing, which is an amalgamation of aggregation of various stakeholders' opinions, even those that are not mentioned here, they will go there. Civil society, even the media, even individual can go, even professional body, they can go, different professional body. Once that is submitted to the National Assembly, but remember, even the National Assembly are committed to moving Nigeria forward. One of the ways to do so is through this tax reform bill, which I believe has more merit than demerit, many of which will benefit every one of us, especially if those provisions are well implemented. There are 4 bills, the Nigeria tax bill, the Nigeria Administrative Bill, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, the Joint Revenue Board. All those have now streamlined how our tax should be done in Nigeria, and I believe we are going to benefit more, both at individual level, at government level, and at state, local government, you know, in terms of the revenue that will come, the streamlining of the processes in the head.
Well, Mr. Idris, let me take you up on something you already mentioned, which was this TED fund, which was supposed to have wounded down, you know, in 2030. There was big controversy. ASU was totally unhappy about that because they said they fought for TED fund, and it was supposed to be their own, their own reassurance from the federal government that certain infrastructure will be taken care of. But right now, we see that that is now one of the areas of compromise because what the federal government was proposing through these reforms was that monies that were going to TED fund should now begin to go to NEL fund, that's the student loan fund. For you, do you think that this is a setback of sort for that loan fund that has now been set up? Because it does appear that there is an ideological question being raised here as to what we see for funding for our tertiary institutions, particularly the federal tertiary institutions.
I don't think it's a setback. Government purse is large. Government will certainly find an avenue to fund the Nigerian student loans mechanism. However, I don't also subscribe to the continuous existence of certain government agencies. Quite a number of the agencies that we have today and we are creating, to my mind and from my little understanding of governance, they are unnecessary. Why do we need, for example, a tertiary education trust fund if the allocation from the budget to educational sector is sufficient? The only reason why the TET fund was created and the education tax deduction is done from businesses is because the revenue system we've been implementing is a bit opaque, and generally Nigerians evade and avoid tax with reckless abandon. Both the avoidance and the evasion is so common. And like my colleague Mr. Taufik did say, we have a multiplicity of taxes. Local government charge tax, the state government does, and then the federal government. But this is coming because we are running a presidential system of government, the so-called independent of the states and the local government. But to what extent, to what level can you really say someone is independent when he or she is waiting for a handout from, let's say, the big brother, quote and unquote, that is the federal government. So yes, the state could be said to be independent, but they are dependent when it comes to what to run the system. So how independent is that independent? I believe, when eventually the National Assembly gets cracking with these recommendations from the Nigerian Governors Forum, they will have to find an avenue to state categorically how and where funding for the Nigerian loans, student loans system will come from. Otherwise, there will be a major challenge. And I would love to see in the nearest future, just like what we have seen in the tax system, like Mr. President should come up with, a bit of a process to rejuvenate our educational laws. But these laws are archaic and old, and we need to change them. There are quite a number of areas that, like I did say, that we probably don't need them. For example, why do we need the regional commissions that we are setting up? Are we saying that the ministries are useless? So you want to wind up tertiary education trust fund, but you are also creating other kind of, if you like, drain pipes, excuse my choice of phrase, just like the tertiary education trust fund. Such funding for even the administration of some of this commission needs to be, looked at. The Oreshanye report is there. We expect President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to implement that report, quickly and urgently, so that there could be drastic reduction in cost of governance through the merger of quite a number of agencies. So why you are asking one agency that has the operation of which has been somewhat successful and people could see, the impact of the tertiary education trust fund, but other agencies that you have reported before you are not touching them. So sometimes one wonders, where is Mr. President's, desire in this restructuring of, the entity called Nigeria? I like to mention also that the northern governors, the 19 northern governors, are part and parcel of the Nigerian Governors Forum. I don't see them disagree with what is coming out from the Nigerian Governors Forum, because they are also, there, and they were at the discourse. I happen to have had, a series of conversations with a number of them on this particular, tax bills. And I think, some of the, agreement that has now been reached, and which will eventually be part of the input in the tax processing, tax bill process, will also be, given to the National Assembly. And I don't see a rancorous relationship. And I want to hasten to advise that I think we should stop, regionalizing, comment. The fact that someone from the North comes out to say, I fundamentally disagree with this, let's not look at it from a regional basis. Ekiti State would have suffered just like, say, Zamfara State or Taraba State.
So, just a moment, Mr. Idris. So perhaps that would have been the situation, but you know, it would seem that from the very start, this conversation was going to be regionalized. When you have the Northern Governors Forum being the one to voice and withdraw their support on the initial basis, I mean, in the initial case. So that was already in the works, but it does appear now that looking at the fact that the support is coming from the Nigerian Governors Forum, there's some nationalistic support, so to speak. Do you think that will eventually help it push it through the National Assembly?
It will, MAPE will certainly help. There is now clearly a unity of purpose, and there is a united team now, everybody lining up. What we hope and pray is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will see this effort and agree to some of these suggestions. Because, you know, this suggestion from the Nigerian Governors Forum, it didn't come arising from discussions or understanding reached with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. No, it did come arising from conversation reached with the leadership of the National Assembly. So this is just an input, a suggestion by the Nigerian Governors Forum on this particular topic. Unlike
Mr. Tawo, just to interrupt you again, Mr. Idris, Mr. Tawo Idele says he believes this bill, he was addressing LCCI, will be passed, or these bills will be passed in the first quarter of this year. Are you optimistic that it will be?
With this development, I'm very much optimistic that the bills will be passed within the first quarter, certainly.
Oh, because okay. What about you, Mr. Raimi, Dr. Raimi?
Yeah, yes, I quite believe that it will happen, and my belief is rooted on this. Even before the break, you can see the National Assembly, of course, two hierarchy. The Senate had already done their first reading, the second reading, waiting for public hearing. And you know, after public hearing and review of the outcome of public hearing is the vote on it to be approved. The House of Rep, of course, they have also expressed willingness, you know, to accelerate consideration of this bill. There are two things they said they will be doing at this early time of the year. The passage of the annual bill, the budget, you know, which they slated that maybe by end of this month, you know, and that's why they have suspended plenary in order for committees to be meeting, which they have been doing, drilling those ministers, asking questions, which we believe will lead to a better revised document. That's the budget. So the next will be this tax bill. And so I want to believe that it will be passed within this quarter so that we can begin to start the implementation. And I also want to ask Mr. President, of course, he's a strategic and methodical visionary leader, like I said earlier. He already has his plan. Let this plan start because Nigeria can't wait. Honestly, the ultimate of all this goodwill that we are advocacy we are also doing is how does it affect the standard of living of Nigerians.
That's a big question.
The revenue has increased since last year. People are asking at the state level that they have not seen much impact. How does this revenue, this tax bill ultimately touch every sector of our national life? And I believe it will happen. I have so much confidence in it.
Well, we'll certainly watch and see how the tax reform bills eventually fare in the National Assembly, whether this is the major hurdle for them to cross or whether there will be another hurdle. You never can tell. Wait and we'll watch.
There are different stakeholders, but this one is what we call in development critical stakeholders.
So this hurdle. Well, we'll see about that. Well, we have to, ride on your own optimism. We'll see how it eventually does. Dr. Taufik Raimi, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily. He's a development expert, business and policy analyst. Thank you for your time with us this morning. And also Mr. Shoaibu Idris, who is an economist and also the managing director, CEO of Timeline Consult Limited, joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Thank you so much for speaking with us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, I do know that this conversation around tax reforms is not yet over. You might be getting a bit of it on top of the hour when Idanre brings you Business Morning on Sunrise Daily.
You're absolutely correct, Malfoy. Of course, it's the conversation for the day. The Governors Forum gave us this topic yesterday, so everyone has to feast on it today and in the coming days. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. 30 minutes of business before we head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. And as usual, we start from the global space, telling you that oil prices fell back on Thursday, a day after settling a multi-month high, as the United States President Joe Biden's latest sanctions targeting Russia and a larger than forecast fall in U.S. crude stocks drive the market. Now look at Brent for this morning. It's down almost 1%. That's a huge drop, 0.9%, and it's dropped from $82 plus that we had at this time yesterday, $81.29 a barrel. WTI is even down. It fell more than that. 1.7% is what it lost to $78.68 a barrel. We know all of this started, the ups and the major ups and downs started after the Biden administration imposed hundreds of sanctions targeting Russia's military industrial base and evasion schemes, after earlier levying broader sanctions on Russian oil producers and tankers. Moscow's top customers are now scouring the globe for replacement barrels, while shipping rates have surged also, with Donald Trump being sworn in for his second term on Monday. Well, the market seems to be approaching a wait-and-see phase and awaits the reaction from the incoming U.S. administration on the issue of sanctions. And pricier oil may also lead to clashes between Trump and the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries if the incoming president follows his previous playbook. And of course, let's looking at the Naira for how it traded yesterday. The NAFEX depreciated yesterday, lost 5 Naira 20 kobo. That's talking about the Naira, closing at 1,560 Naira 20 kobo. NFM opened on a bullish note, driven by increased demand for FX and compared to available supply. However, strong participation by the Central Bank of Nigeria seemed to balance things out at the close of trade, and that's why we saw the CBN rates unchanged at the close of trade, while NAFEX and NAFEM were also unchanged, but NAFEX lost 0.33%. So there was intervention in the market yesterday. Remember, yesterday, this time we had the CBN rate as 1,550. So talking about sustaining the rate in 24 hours. That's what we've seen because of the intervention of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, the World Bank has projected that Nigeria's economy will grow by 3.5% in 2025 and improve slightly to 3.6% the year after. That's in 2026, and that's driven by increased services sector activity and gradual improvement in macroeconomic stability. In its latest Global Economic Prospects report, the forecast suggests a steady but modest recovery for the country amid ongoing domestic and global challenges. According to international financial institutions, as the World Bank in this case, projected growth by 2025 and 2026 reflect rebound in consumption, supported by gradual declining inflation following monetary policy tightening by the central bank. So we see that services is becoming more prominent in the Nigerian economy. But I mean, there was an attention drawn to what are the services? Is it just trade, or is there value-added services in this case? Before we start celebrating that services is coming up, it should be value-added services if it should be anything to go by. Now, the big news since yesterday is, of course, the tax reform bills, and the Nigeria's Governors Forum is advocating a revised sharing formula for the value-added tax in a way they say will ensure equitable distribution of resources. And that's arising from a meeting with the Presidential Tax Reforms Committee in Abuja. The governors endorsed the sharing formula for value-added tax. Regarding the terminal clause for the TET fund, Naseni and NIDA, the governors recommend that such clause be deleted from the current tax reform bill that's before the National Assembly. Well, expectedly, this is a big topic for the day. We'll be having a conversation on that in a bit. There's also reaction. The Academic Staff Union following this in Abuja Zone Senior Staff Association of Nigerian University Students and other unions again kicking against the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024 on the ground that the proposed changes could lead to destruction of the country's already struggling tertiary education system. Addressing a joint news conference in Abuja, the zonal coordinator of ASU, Mr. Salau Lawal, expressed deep concerns over the planned phasing out of Tertiary Education Trust Fund, that's TET Fund. It says the vital financial lifeline for public universities and other higher institutions in the country. The Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, currently under review by the National Assembly, is proposing a reduction of allocations to TET Fund, which has traditionally supported public universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education in Nigeria. The bill suggests that starting in 2025, only 50% of the education tax will go to TET Fund, while the remaining funds redirected to other initiatives, including the Nigerian Education Loan Fund.
The survival of TET Fund is a matter of national importance. Thus, ASU firmly resolves not to stay silent as TET Fund, a monumental achievement of the union's constructive engagement with successive Nigerian governments since 1992, faces intimidations of dwindling or eradication. Any attempt, whether intentional or otherwise, to repeal TET Fund Act 2011 will constitute a monumental and profound damage to the education sector and the nation as a whole. The implication of the proposed tax system, the planned shift in funding towards student loans, may be an approach to force public tertiary education institutions into applying overpriced tuition fees and possibly converting them into revenue-generating bodies. The phasing out of TET Fund will cause a momentous danger to tertiary education in Nigeria, as its aid to the fiscal infrastructure and human capital development will eventually come to a stop. This move could also lead to students becoming protracted debtors, imitating the financial challenges faced by the nation itself. ASU believes that these changes will brutally weaken TET Fund, which has played a fundamental role in the development of Nigeria's public tertiary education system for over a decade and eventually kill it by 2030.
Tax reform is obviously one of the key macroeconomic elements that will determine how 2025 will go. It was one of the issues discussed at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry's outlook for the year 2025. They put that together and tell us from their perspective what we could expect in this year. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is taking stock of the economy in 2024 with a view to project where the economy is headed in 2025. As expected, the federal government's proposed budget of 49.7 trillion naira, funding the deficit as well as optimizing the funds, are top on the priority list.
The projected budget deficit of 11.3 trillion, that is 3.4% of our GDP. We rely on domestic and external borrowing, raising concern about debt sustainability, and government target is to achieve a GDP growth of 4.2% in 2025, while reducing inflation to 15%. This projection hints on successful policy implementation.
One of the reforms which will shape 2025 is that of tax, which has been a heated conversation for a while.
This economy is going to move from where it is and grow in three manners. To grow inclusively, and that's to create jobs, to grow sustainably, and to grow in a sustainable manner. There are three different things: sustainable, inclusive, and sustained. All right? If that will happen, then we must bridge the manufacturing deficit.
The way forward must capture many macroeconomic elements.
We believe that this year the reforms are going to benefit the people, and we can already begin to see that. There's more money at state level, at federal level to spend on infrastructure, which benefits everybody, including even in agriculture, for food stability and what have you. We can also see that there's more focus on the local economy, meaning that local businesses are benefiting more, because we are forced to patronize them. We must patronize local as much as possible.
From the federal government, the reforms continue, but with a view to reaping the benefits in 2025.
We do expect that the tax bill should be enacted into law before the end of Q1 of 2025. That would give us the opportunity to give about 3 months, 90 days notice, and then be able to commence the implementation of the reform bills by second half of the year, by early July.
The government is not alone in this positive expectation. Many Nigerians are also waiting for this after what they've termed the pains of the reforms.
Wow. Okay, I'll read the other comment.
Well, that's the outlook there. Given some conditions, we could see the gains of the reforms. But this morning, let's just settle on that tax reform, because it's a big one. And we have joining us here in the studio the Chief Executive Officer of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf, good morning. And
good morning.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
This is obviously not a new topic. I know the last time I spoke with you on this, that was late last year when we were reviewing the year. You did say that you thought perhaps the committee would have left out some of those political, and we see those political issues are actually the ones that delayed, the implementation up to now. Mr. Idanre has said that we should see, after this hurdle that we hope we have crossed, since the governors have given their endorsement with condition, that we should see implementation start by the second part of this year. But first, I think we should look at some of those propositions by the governors. If we could have that. We know that the issue of the population, equality, derivation, those were major ones. So we see that the governors are asking for revised value-added tax sharing formula, which is that political thing that was there. So they said 50% should be based on equality, 30% on derivation, and 20% on population. This was a major area of criticism that has delayed us up to this in the reforms of this tax, yes.
There are two major components of this tax reform proposition. There is the technical component, which the committee had, done a very good work of. That is looking at the tax system, archaic laws, and equity and all of that. Then there is the political component, which is about this revenue allocation. Because revenue allocation is not exactly a tax reform bill. Tax reform is about efficiency of tax administration, optimizing revenue generation and all of that. But this political component required a political consensus, which is what we are now seeing. Now that the governors have stepped in, I think we are scaling a major hurdle, to this tax reform bill. Of course, there are other issues. I listened to your background reports, ASU and the TED Fund. Nobody can deny the impact of TED Fund on infrastructure development in our tertiary institutions. It has been very phenomenal. That is not a proposal. That is not something to tamper with, if you ask me. Because if you take that away, there is no way we can have the same kind of impact on infrastructure development in our universities. So I support ASU fully, that as much as possible, we should retain the TED fund and even the proposal of the governors. You know, there's a sunset provision for TED fund, for NIDA, for NASENE. And the resolution was that that should be expunged completely. So these are the political issues which required political consensus. So that will allow us to move forward with the bigger issues, you know, of the tax reform, equity, revenue optimization, multiplicity of taxes, and all of that. So
and the governors too agree that there's a need for reform of our tax system. It's actually a cake. I think that is.
No, that has never been in contention, really. I wish the committee had not entangled itself in this revenue allocation issue. Otherwise, we will not be having all these issues.
Okay, so what?
But now that it has been politically, at least to a large extent,
resolved.
Okay,
resolved.
Yes.
So what does this mean, actually, having sharing formula 50% based on equality? What is equality? Derivative, I think maybe where it comes from, population. Explain to us what this means and how it will be implied, or how it could be implied.
No, the point is that this is a more inclusive proposition. Because when you talk about, because the current situation is that 50% is actually on equality of states. I'm talking of the current allocation of VAT revenue. The only thing that has changed now is like swapping the derivation component with the population. Currently, the population is 30% and derivation is 20%. Now that has been swapped in a way. Now we now have 20% population, 30% derivation. So the 50% equality of states means that all the states, irrespective of your population, derivation, will get equal proportion from the VAT proceeds. So everybody is equal as far as that 50% component is concerned. The 30% will be based on derivation. Now, the derivation will be, according to the tax reform proposal, will be based on consumption. So 30% will be based on that, where the VAT revenue is generated from, based on consumption, according to the tax committee. So I hope there is no controversy about that. The last one is based on population. Of course, this will benefit states with bigger population. And you know that the northern part of the country actually have a fair advantage as far as population is concerned. So for me, this is more equitable, and this will address the political concerns, because this is a highly politically sensitive issue. It's also an emotive issue. So this consensus is a welcome development, and I think we can move forward now. Of course, we have the issue of the TED fund. We have also the issue of over-centralization, because this whole tax reform proposal is likely to centralize all the revenues and all of that. And that will also come with its own challenges. So we have to be prepared to manage.
Could you expatiate on that? What do you mean?
What I mean is, you know, we are going to pull all the revenues now. Both from all the revenue, we are going to pull everything together.
It's supposed to be just one body now.
Yes.
At least that's the proposal.
Yes. Something close to what we have with the TSA. And you know the kind of challenges that the TSA created. Even the FCT minister had to get an approval from the president to pull FCT out of the TSA. Because the bureaucratic bottlenecks, when it comes to pulling revenues together, and everybody now go through the budgetary process and all of it. It's a very big issue. And that is why this is even sometimes breed corruption. That's why we have this huge allegation against the former accountant general running into billions of naira. So over-centralization creates bureaucracy. Bureaucracy creates a lot of corruption.
No, but shouldn't this help transparency? I mean, if, for instance, it's supposed to be more of digital and technology employed, and then we should be able to trace where the funds are going to, who is taking it, we'll have to go through the process. Shouldn't the centralization in this case bring more transparency?
It should bring more transparency, But what I'm saying is that centralization creates bottlenecks. It creates bureaucracy. And any system that has intense bureaucracy, that has a lot of bureaucratic bottlenecks, naturally will breed corruption. I can tell you that. I mean, look at even the public hearings. Even the police yesterday was saying that they want to be taken out of the envelope system. You know, the universities have been taken out of TSA.
After a lot of fights.
Because it created a whole lot of problems. So, if we are going to go that route, we should be ready to deal with the challenges of bureaucracy.
I hope that's
budget releases and all of.
I hope that's not the next battle we are going to start fighting, because I know how long we've been fighting the battle of this political sentiment around the.
Well, those will be lesser battles to fight, you know, because that will happen more at the level of implementation of these things. Because listening to even many of the agencies at this ongoing public hearing on the budget, many of them were complaining about delays, about challenges of releases. And that is why we have to now be rolling over budget implementation year in, year out. So dealing with this issue of bureaucracy from budget releases are extremely very, very important going forward. Then, of course, we need to take account of the fact that this economy has a huge informal sector. Because go to the informal sector, nobody is talking about VAT, nobody is talking about withholding tax. Go to Okeanim, go to Onisha market, go to Alaba market. These things don't mean anything to them. So we have to be conscious of that, because whatever reform we are undertaking has to be fit for purpose. So we need to reckon with all of these things as we progress. But I must admit, a major hurdle has been crossed. Yes.
But shouldn't we look for a way to formalize the economy other than waiting and, you know, rejigging our policies to fit? Wouldn't it be better for us to get the informal into the setting, into the formal setting?
Well, that would be a tall order, because there are merits and there are demerits, you know. But what I think is that whatever policies we have to take account of the peculiarities of the environment. That is not to say that we should not encourage formalization. Of course, there are some progress that have been made in terms of formalization. But it's more important to reckon with the fact that policies must be fit for purpose. Policies must take into account the peculiarities of our own circumstances. That is very, very critical.
Yeah, so you were talking and we saw the ASU from the tertiary institution. That's the other part now. Yes. No increase in the VAT rate. Was there was a plan to...
There's a proposal. Yeah. From this year, it's supposed to be 10%. You know, we are already at 7.5.
Yes.
Supposed to be 10%. Then I think in another 2 years, it will go to about 12.5 or something.
Yes.
Then by 2030, it will go to 15. Now, this is also being sensitive to the current conditions. Inflation, cost of living, challenges of businesses, and you know, the poverty situation. So that, for me, I think that is why the governors have suggested that for now, let us peg the VAT rate. And I believe that we can achieve a lot, you know, with improving the administration of taxes, improving the leveraging of technology so that we stop leakages and all of that. So I think it makes sense.
And increase the tax net.
Exactly. That is critical.
To be our first focus at this time.
In fact, that's a major objective of this reform. Because we have a whole lot of people and entities that are outside the tax net. So I think the idea of not increasing the VAT rate is a very good idea.
But they also said that they're advocating for continued exemption of essential goods and agricultural produce from VAT. And, you know, sometimes, for instance, the import suspension that the government announced is supposed to run from July to December, we don't even know if that even took off. And I've tried speaking to some agencies that are supposed to be in the value chain of implementation. It doesn't seem like there was anything done, but advocating for this, I wonder how realistic it is.
Something was done, but again, it comes with the problem of bureaucracy. These policies were announced I think, in July or June.
It was in June. It was supposed to start in July.
Yes. Now it's supposed to impact on the food imports. It's supposed to also impact on the pharmaceutical sector. The implementation did not start until sometimes around December or November.
When it was supposed to end.
When it's supposed to end. Exactly.
Be
and it has practically ended. A few companies benefited, but the objectives were not achieved. So that is why it's also important to worry about the apparatus of policy implementation. You can have a good policy and not have any good outcomes. Because if the implementation machinery has issues, then there'll be no concrete outcomes from those reforms. So it is very important to address that, you know. But already we have some exemptions in tax, in VAT, for essential goods. And what the governors are saying is that those should continue.
Should be sustained.
Yes.
Okay, and then now the battle moves to the tertiary institutions, even though the governors are supporting them. But we saw there, because we don't know, it's still in the National Assembly, we don't know if the lawmakers will accept all the proposals from the governors. Then that will help us deal with the problem of TED Fund and NASENI and all of that.
The problem of TED Fund and NASENI, particularly TED Fund, first is the terminal clause, that the sunset provision in the law, that by 2030 or so it will be phased out completely. Now the governors are against that, and I agree with them, because of the impact of TED Fund on infrastructure. Because if you say that they should go through the budgetary process, I can assure you they will not get that kind of results in terms of infrastructure development, in the university. So it's a good thing. But the worry of ASU now is that the percentage in terms of what will come to TED Fund will reduce. And that is what ASU is against now. So partially the battle has been at least supported by the governors. But the issue of the percentage reduction is something that we need to look into. And I think ASU is making a very, very valid case that in order not to, pull down or retrogress development in our tertiary education system, we have to allow the TED Fund to be. And as much as possible, we should not get to a situation where we completely commercialize university education or make it, completely withdraw the subsidy from university education. Because many of us that went to the university were able to go to university because of the subsidy. Even some of the policymakers. So it's something that we need to look at very, very critically so that we don't have a situation that leaves a lot of people behind. Even the current level of school fees, some parents cannot afford it. You need to go to the universities, talk to university administrators. They are still struggling to even afford to pay the current, just marginal review that was done. So if you now get to the point where... Not to mention
when even the little assistance is being removed.
It's being removed because the student loan fund cannot substitute fully for the current subsidy in education, particularly in tertiary education.
So now our eyes move to the lawmakers, the National Assembly. We'll see how much of this they will adopt and how much they will change from the proposals of the governor. But I think the thought is by first quarter we should have seen all this legal
Yes. The governors are very influential. They have a lot of influence
even on the lawmakers.
Yes, on the lawmakers. So I'm very confident and optimistic that their proposals will stay true. But other issues around, this TED Fund and some other things about, this over-centralization and things, there are other conversations. And even those in the oil and gas sector, they also have their own issues. Those in the free trade zones, they also have their own issues.
I think Mr. Oyedele has just a little bit of what it means to be in politics in this country.
Exactly.
He had a taste. One of these days, I hope we'll be able to get him. I know Sheon was trying to get him yesterday, but after the meeting of yesterday, I don't think they want to talk to anybody for a while. But one of these days, we hope to be able to talk to him.
There's a lot of lessons around the political environment, not just technical issues.
Exactly.
There's a lot of lessons.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, for helping us understand some of these changes and what to expect.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so that's it on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We'll head you back to the Sunrise Daily studio. I'll be back at 1 p.m., where, of course, you could hear a bit of this and a whole lot more. It will be 55 minutes of doing business on Friday. Join me then.
As the 2025 Budget Defense Sessions continue in the National Assembly, the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kayode Egbetukun, takes the stage. Initially, there is rapt tension in the room as the IGP begins his presentation on the forced budget implementation.
Observation, point of order, Mr. Chairman.
However, the session took a dramatic turn when a lawmaker raised an observation.
What the IGP is reading is quite different from the document we have here. No, sir, we are all here for budget. It's very, very important that whatever they are presenting, all members will be acquainted with it.
Just as the chairman of the Joint Committee attempted to intervene, his point was quickly corroborated by another lawmaker.
We are not against the presentation of the IGP, but I, as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, should have what the IGP is reading. Yes.
An unexpected confrontation led to a heated exchange.
What the IGP is reading is different from what I have. And I'm going to ask questions. Let me finish. Before you finish. Then I will leave. What are we reading now?
Loud shouts of "go" accompany his decision to walk out of the session.
What we are displaying is what Nigerian does not even want. If you have problem, Senator or House of Reps that have a personal problem with the Nigerian police should not be addressed in this platform.
Order was eventually restored and the IGP resumed his presentation.
The police is being grossly underfunded. We are limited by this envelope budget system has limited us.
I am worried because what you have in your entire budget, wallahi, is not enough to implement what you need to police Nigeria.
The Inspector General of Police should have a direct access to the president. And some of these issues must be laid before the president and commander-in-chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces.
Clearly displeased, the lawmakers threw their weight behind the idea of reviewing the budgeting process for the police.
Your Excellency.
Separately, the Senate Committee on Appropriations commenced a one-day public hearing on the 2025 appropriation bill, inviting top government officials and key stakeholders.
I want to encourage the executive to fully implement the report of the Steve Orosei Panel Presidential Committee on Restructuring and Rationalization of the Federal Government Parastatals Commission and Agency.
The President of the Senate and the Executive promised to deliver a realistic budget where every naira appropriated is well invested.
This budget of restoring this nation, is a beacon of hope, a strategic instrument to secure peace, ignite prosperity, and lay the cornerstone of a stronger and more resilient economy for Nigeria.
The 2025 budget is intended, among others, to continue to restore macroeconomic stability. We are confident that the economy is facing the right direction.
The lawmakers are hoping to wrap up the 2025 budget defense sessions by the end of January. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, it's no longer news that it is, budget defense season, and we've been seeing all manner of, drama playing out at the budget defense sessions. Before the one you saw at the joint sitting of the Committee on the Police, we had seen before now that sitting on JAM committee. There had also been quite a number of other committees sitting. Some of the things that we have heard is either mismanagement, because alongside the budget defense session for 2025 is also a review of what's been happening in 2024. So the committees, as the parastatals and ministries, are expected to bring along their budget performance for 2024. And all manner of revelation has been coming out in some of these budget defense hearings. Some of them they have termed misunderstanding, but quite a number of themes have come out of them, some of which are misunderstanding of the figures or misrepresentation of figures, inadequate budgeting for the year 2025, that's the fiscal year 2025. And we've seen that with quite a number of ministries. The Ministry of Information has come out with that. The Ministry of Agriculture has said their money is not enough. We also saw in the Ministry of Defense how their own budget, they also requested that their budget be upped as well. Well, these are some of the things that we're beginning to see at this budget presentation. And we're wondering, how is it that we're going to make progress in 2025? Because as you heard there, the Senate President saying that they're hoping to ignite prosperity for Nigerians and also make sure that they have a resilient economy for the citizens as well. How are we going to make all of this happen, you know, with some of the, let's say, the drama we're seeing playing out at the budget defense session? Well, Dr. Boniface Chizia joins us now. He's an economist. He joins us virtually all the way from Lagos. Dr. Chizia, I'm sure that you have been paying rapt attention to what has been happening at the budget defense sessions. Any surprises here? Because it would seem that year in, year out, we usually see this, but you would think that it will be on the down low now. It doesn't appear that way, or does it to you?
Well, I'm saying, you know, there are no surprises. I shouldn't be surprised because, you know, we try to do things the way they should be done. I think that's important. You don't submit your budget for a thing. I don't know what the Total Responsibility Act says. The budget should be submitted by end of August, the last quarter. And so all this, you know, in trying to get it approved and so on and so forth, would not be there. So if they had a quarter to look through this and make sure that we keep fidelity to the budget cycle. You know, we celebrated the fact that on President Buhari, we got back to, you know, to budget cycle that coincided with the fiscal year. So that started from 1st January, but now we've already used it. And so we do this, we push it through. In fact, I'm even intrigued that this sort of likely the case because the feeling out there is that this is assembly is in the pocket of the executive. And so simply understand it in, you know, over a two-day period and simply pass it on. And then we continue to adumbrate, you know, the fact that the budgeting environment is just a ritual. You know, I think that it's even good at happening. But it might be you take the case of the place, the senator was spot on. You don't come and do something different from what you circulated. It's not on that way. There's no discipline. So if I'm going to sit down at a meeting and address matters as important as the annual budget, and I've never had it at home, look at it properly, and deliberate on my own on it, and then come to the meeting with some, you know, some questions you need to raise. But the gentleman comes to the meeting, and then what is being read to him is strange matter. So he had a right, you know, to raise objections.
Mm. So, I don't know. I mean, you have commented directly to the committee meeting, the joint committee meeting that had to do with the police, where two lawmakers, as a matter of fact, raised objections saying that they're not, you know, they're not conversant to what it is that the police IG was presenting. That the document he was reading from wasn't a document they were holding in their hands, and we saw, you know, the other colleagues saying, you know, that I don't know what they were trying to do, whether they were trying to shut him up or whether they were trying to say he should calm down. It's unclear, but clearly he was dissatisfied with how things eventually went, and he left with some of his colleagues saying he should go. So what do you think would have transpired? Because a number of Nigerians are now watching that particular scene, and they have suspicion in their hearts as to what exactly could have transpired there. Well, Kayla, this is what we've been saying at the National Assembly. I'm sure you've also been watching with rapt attention. I think the first one that caught the attention of Nigerians was that budget presentation where Senator Oshomole was raising objections with the figures that the JAMB registrar had presented. There was an advocacy that JAMB should also not be getting allocation from the federal government, given just how much it's been able to make in revenue. And then much later, we saw Dr. Oloyede or Professor Oloyede coming out to say that there's been a misrepresentation, that they never presented those figures to Senator Oshomole, and he was reluctant to say those things there because he had respect for the senator. Perhaps he did, and he wasn't captured.
I mean, it actually brings to mind, you know, so that was actually, in many ways, that was a little bit of what happened there yesterday, when Honorable Mark Essett said, what I'm hearing him say is not what I'm looking at.
Yes.
Here. And that, of course, caused Peter Mweboy to walk out yesterday, you know. So, and the explanations that we got from yesterday's conversation was, you know, he's allowed to do an abridged version. If we say summarize it, he's allowed to do that. But you see, it brought to my mind exactly when I heard that yesterday was what happened with Oshomole and the JAMB registrar. Because afterwards, you know, he said, oh, I had respect for Mr. Oshomole, so I didn't know how to tell him that what he was saying wasn't what I was presenting. But look at the uproar it caused in the country. We kept wondering, what sort of insecticides are these?
Are they using for
fumigation? What meals are these? You know, so those are some of the issues. And the ongoing budget presentation, I mean, like you said earlier, really on point there, is an opportunity for us to understand what they can do with what is being presented to them and what they have done with the money that was given to them before. I'm told that Dr. Chizea is back with us. Dr. Chizea, can you hear us?
You're not hearing me.
Oh, the network is a little wonky. You know, we can hear you, but it's not very clear. That's what the issue is. I mean, we do have to go on a short break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We are having a conversation about the budget defense sessions going on at the National Assembly. And of course, we have been looking at the recent ones that have happened. What kinds of conversations have they thrown up? And where are we going next with the conversations on these budget defenses? The National Assembly Joint Committee on Finance had given a 48-hour ultimatum to agencies to appear or risk the withdrawal of funding for their 2025 operations. So how many of them are we going to be seeing before the end of January? Well, we'll be talking about what they are giving us. We have been speaking with Dr. Boniface Chizea. Good morning. Can you hear us now?
Well, okay, I've stepped out. I'm out of step out. I'm outside now. I hope the network will be better, yes.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's see if we can move forward from that conversation. We've been hearing, at least from the Minister of Defense, he said his money, it's not enough for the amount of work that they have to do. The police yesterday, we also heard, even from the members of that committee saying, look, the money that has been allocated to you will not be enough to do the job that you have to get done for the Nigerian people. What do you make of these conversations about the money is not being enough for the work that they have to do?
I look at those ones that are, you know, essentially very important. So you're talking of, you know, education, you know, you're talking of health, you're talking of security, you know, so you try and do that. But you see, we've not come with the sort of discipline that will help us to manage our resources. So even what we have is not being properly managed. So why do we have to create another ministry, livestock, for instance, and making allocations, you know, so we're creating more universities and so on and so forth. So I think that we have to come to a place where we have to be very conscious, you know, that resources are limited. So we have an economy that's not growing, an economy that's shrinking, in fact, inflation at over 34%, and so on. And who tells you, you know, the value of money, you know, within the system. And then, so we're doing all this. So I think there's a need for us to rationalize, and I just said earlier on, to prioritize, because there are certain sectors that you cannot but, you know, make sure that you take care of them, you know, so health, education, and security. You know, look at what they're doing there. Our troops in which state is that? Kebbi State. You know, as we had there's a new terrorist group that's killing our troops, and so on. So you can't always have that challenge. You know, we've not been able to meet the percentage. Even when you take the totality for the budget, and then you take something like health, there's a percentage. UNESCO said we should give to health. We've never been able to do that. You take education, there's a percentage. So we have a global body, and because of these sectors are important, so they emphasize these sectors, and then tell you that, and even when you have your budget sum, you know, so we have the expenditure of close to 48 trillion naira, they tell you this percentage should go to education, this percentage should go to health, and so on. So that's the challenge. And then we seem to multiply things, and we create ministries. We're supposed to have a maximum of about 42 ministers. Now we have 45.
Yes.
And those things are wasteful. And so you have a challenge. You have the challenge of inadequate resource availability. And then you don't have discipline to prioritize, how this, the resource you have is better managed. And so that's the challenge.
I mean, Dr. Chize, I mean, it was very important that you noted that, because one of the things, at least even from the Minister of State for Defense, Mr. Bello Matawalle, he said just last year, based on the budget that he had, they were able to just get 20 armored personnel carriers. What can you do with 20 APCs if we're dealing with a new terrorist organization, dealing with insecurity, not just in the north, in other parts of the country as well? I want to take you back, because I think the network got a little wonky when you were trying to express yourself about the situation that happened yesterday, where Honorable Mark Esset and Peter Nweboyin were saying, look, what we are seeing on our paper is not what the police is reading to us. And then, of course, at the end of that conversation yesterday was also the statement that, the money that is allocated to the police is not enough for the work that is for them to do. What do you make of that? What impact do you think that will have on the security architecture of our country, seeing as we are dealing with a lot of these situations right now?
Well, like I just said earlier on, the fact is that the gentleman that had the presence of mind, to know that what was being read was not what he read earlier. He should be commended. I just say this because most people they had haven't, I can tell you, for nothing, for free. And most of those who sat around that table have not looked at the papers before coming to the meeting. And then, of course, it's something that is terrible. So for you to make presentations, pre-budget presentations, coming to meetings, you circulate papers, then you expect that, that it would align what they read should be what you presented. And then you now come there, and then people want gentlemen, to shut up and not say anything. That's a terrible thing. But for me, I see Nigeria, and I've almost given up hope. Well, maybe we shouldn't. We should be merchants of hope. But I think that the things happen in a way that we don't seem to be seeing us making any progress in particular directions. And particularly with budgeting, we're not doing very well. Like I said in my earlier comments, we should have budget reviews. We had them before in the past. So the media, the Minister of Finance will assemble everybody, we all rush to CBS here, and there's presentation, so and we go through it, and then some monitoring, some tracking, and so on and so forth. But now they're trying to do so many things at the same time. They're trying to review 2024, they're not trying to look at 2025, and then, I think we're trying to do too much, within this space of time we have.
So in your own assessment, would you say that this 2025 budget, as optimistic as a number of people feel, do you think it will have any impact on the quality of lives that Nigerians will lead this year?
It will have impact, but then you imagine how it will not be the sort of impact you and I would want to see. I think there's some issues in this country. That power, for instance, Nigerians are growing, and you look at the way the price system has been distorted, because we want to, I don't know what's happening, and we're trying to do so many things. We're trying to do them together overnight. And the population is growing, so there's hardship everywhere. I've not seen anything like that before. My prices have gone through the roof. It's difficult to live in Nigeria today. So I think that it's a terrible situation. So we will do it, and then even with the money you budget, there's lots of leakages. So how much of an effective expenditure that we're going to have? I think that we should begin to, even as I said that. It's never, so it's going to be looted and so on, and nobody around that table wants to do anything in interest of the country. It's what is the need for me. I think that's the challenge. So what am I going to get? So if we're going to spend money, who's going to do who are we going to do the contract? So what am I going to get out of it? And once you come with that mindset, you are compromised. So you are taking the person that's going to deliver a poor job and so on and so forth. And that's why, we don't seem to make any sort of progress. You and I, we want to see us make. That's a challenge. So we have inadequate inflow. Then once we're not managing it well, and then you have corruption. Corruption is out of the window. It's a terrible thing. So that's the challenge. Yes, that's the challenge you have.
Well, Dr. Chize, I do hope that in spite of the challenges that you see, that you will continue to see the glass as half full. We have to thank you so much for speaking with us on Sunrise Early this morning. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the 2025 budget presentation.
Thank you, Mope. Thank you. God bless you.
Well, we're going to take a bit of feedback now, and we see that we have quite a number of mails, or is this tweets now. I'll start with this one from Professor Inakena, who says, High-income earners will also benefit from the bill. That's talking about tax reform bills now. When passed into law, as it seeks VAT exemption and purchase of real estate, clarity on taxation of benefits in kind, and limit of taxable accommodation benefits to 20% of annual income, with an exemption of tax on sale of shares of up to 150 million naira and gains not exceeding 10 million naira. So this is Professor Nakena now looking at the tax reform bills and seeing what is there for high-income earners as well.
Festus Akimboyewa, he says Lagos State and Rivers State must be applauded for putting the unity of Nigeria first if the tax bills are passed and become law in the format proposed by the governors, because they'll be losing billions of naira, he says. Time for citizens of our less performing states to call out their governors.
And this last one is from Yomi D, who also goes by Jesus for the Streets. He says the slightest delay on tax reform bills has caused everyone, even the committees proposing it, to take a keen look at the bill over and over. And we all can agree it's good for all Nigerians. It's time we ran with the vision so we can deal with imminent potential challenges that will come with implementation. So everybody's moving now from the bills and already looking forward to implementation. But it's early days yet. They are still bills. They've not become an act yet. So but we certainly look forward to seeing how this major hurdle that has now been surmounted by the Tax Reform Committee and the bills themselves, and how they will now impact what happens in the National Assembly. Well, we have to thank you for sending in your feedback and for being a part of the program this morning, this beautiful Friday. I have to mention this Friday.
Oh, dear. Yes, it is.
My favorite day of the week. Thank you for watching. I think
I'm going to say the next phase in the tax reform bills is a public hearing. So I think we should all be a part of it, all right? Look out, we'll carry it here, don't worry. Just tune in. We'll carry it here. Make sure you're a part of that conversation. Listen to what's going on. The devil is in the details, so you really need to listen to the details and see how it's going to impact you and your family in this year that we have entered. So good luck to all of you. It's going to be a great weekend for us all. Have a great one. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you next time.